Yes, the Rubin Report. No, I'm not going to diss on Dave Rubin. I have respect for Dave Rubin, and I love that he allows people from all sides of the political spectrum onto his show. But I will be responding to a conversation he is having with his guest.
Joining me this week is a comedian, an author, a redneck, and a liberal, Trae Crowder. Welcome to the Rubin Report.
I'm glad to be here, man.
So, Trae Crowder. I have a love-hate thing for him. I love that he's a redneck. I can relate. I hate that he's a liberal. Well, not a liberal in the truest sense, but he's a socialist, or at least a Luxembourg. So he's a redneck and a liberal. So I'll probably agree with him on 50 to 75% of every political position that he has.
A redneck and a liberal.
Yeah, that throws people a lot.
Do I have to even ask you a question to start this thing, or do I just hand it to you there and we go?
So what has become my favorite way to define that was actually said to me at one of my comedy shows in Austin, Texas. A guy from Mississippi who now lives in Austin, a fan, came up to me and was talking to me, and he was like, and he seemed so genuinely frustrated too about like how he's been stereotyped or whatever for being a redneck, whatever else. He's like, man, I like to blow shit up, but I ain't fucking racist, man. You know what I mean? And he seemed like so upset about it. I wanted to put my hand on his shoulder. I was like, I know, buddy, it's all right. You know what I mean? But yeah, basically just, I grew up in a very stereotypically redneck fashion.
I know exactly what he is describing here. So a quick story about myself. I was born in the 23rd most populated city in the United States. I grew up in a city that is bigger than Las Vegas. However, I moved to the rural area when I was still in elementary school. So I still had the whole city culture brewing in my developing character. Heavy metal, traffic, stores everywhere, the smell of cement during a light drizzle. When I moved to the rural town, I started shifting to redneck rural culture. I'd wear shirts with sleeves cut off. I'd wear the stereotypical cap that a redneck wore, but I was in denial. I had Bieber hair sometimes, I dressed like a hipster sometimes, I hung out with stoners. My family would say I'm turning into a redneck, and I would be offended on so many levels because I didn't want to be a redneck. I had always perceived redneck as a bad thing because they were always referred to as stupid, despite the fact that I lived in a redneck town.
What really, if you had to define what a redneck is, what really is a redneck?
Well, a lot of people, for some reason, assume that I'm opposed to this guy for whatever reason, but I actually have a lot of respect for him. But I think Jeff Foxworthy defined it the best.
So it involves a TV on another TV?
Right, obviously he made a whole career out of defining it. But he got asked that question a lot, and the way he ultimately defined it was, he said, it's the glorious absence of sophistication, which I pretty well agree with. And in our book that I wrote with my tour mates Corey and Drew, we sort of added an addendum to that, which was not giving a damn, generally speaking, about how people feel about you and the way you live your life and whatever. You know what I mean? I do what I do, and I like what I like, and I don't give a damn what you think about it or not.
Yeah.
That, coupled with the aforementioned lack of sophistication, is what makes a redneck to me.
He hit the nail right on the coffin starting out. Rednecks don't give a damn. To be fair though, the definition of redneck is a middle-class working white person who is politically reactionary. That's it. However, the words hick and hillbilly are more negative and mean stupid white people, or poor white people. White trash, essentially. But ultimately, yeah, rednecks don't give a damn. We're not politically correct. We wear cut-off shirts. We wear boots, jeans, or whatever the hell we want to wear. We drive what we want, and we listen to what we want. We also just want to be left the hell alone.
Very recently.
Yeah, and you've done a bunch of videos on YouTube, I think, untangling some of that stuff and showing people, actually, no, that's not really all there is to this stuff. But how poor did you grow up? Because you're white, so I assume you get white privilege. Did you not have a lot of white privilege growing up, you big whitey?
So I've actually had to get used to being white as I've gotten into the middle class and stuff in the past few years. Like, that's a recent phenomenon for me.
Yeah.
I tell people that sometimes, and it's true, and I know it sounds weird to people. I never felt white growing up. I don't mean to imply that I felt black or is like, oh, you know what I mean? That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is my whole life when I've heard about white people and what white people do, I've thought of like, Connecticut, like very yuppie-ish, like, the landed gentry. You know what I mean? Like that's what I thought of when I heard of white people, and we were white trash.
He's a little racist. No, just kidding. You see, when he hears the word white people, he thinks of rich, upper-class people. I really don't give a fuck what he thinks, though. But bottom line, white trash is still white. It doesn't make a difference what class you belong in. A black gangbanger is still black. Obama and Ben Carson are black. Morgan Freeman is still black. Being a white person isn't the same thing as being a wealthy, upper-class, yippity, judgmental asshole drinking champagne at a wealthy gathering.
Like a good example I like to use is cops, right? And now, don't get me wrong, they're not shooting rednecks in the streets, but...
What an ignorant thing to say. More white people are killed by police per year and over the years. Of course, if you say that, you'll be accused of misinterpreting the data about how black people are shot at a higher rate than white people per capita. However, then you can accuse them of throwing out one piece of important, crucial data. Let's play a logic game here. How do you get shot by the police? Hint for you silly people, it isn't by being a colored person. It's police interaction. People who interact with police more often will be shot more. And a good way to see why black people get shot at a higher rate is by taking a look at the amount of crime they commit. The black population of the United States is only 10 to 15%, and in every violent crime statistic, they are overrepresented by at least half. White people are underrepresented, or they show what you would expect. So when you commit crime at a higher rate, you then interact with police at a higher rate, thus getting shot at a higher rate. So white people are still getting shot more by sheer numbers. But he's right, rednecks and police don't get along. Rednecks and authority figures don't get along. So it leaves me to wonder why he is a Democrat and why other rednecks worship the Republican Party.
It's a well-established thing culturally that, like, cops and rednecks don't get along. You know what I mean? Every episode of Cops they ever made either took place in the ghetto or the trailer park.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, like, there was definitely that feeling of, like, I don't know, no, I never felt privileged at all, to answer your question. I mean, that's not the same as saying that I don't think white privilege, like, exists in a lot of arenas or whatever. It does, but I think if you're poor, it doesn't really matter very much.
Yeah.
The good thing is, though, or the good thing, but...
White privilege exists, but sometimes you just don't feel the white privilege. Seriously, man? Now, it is true that the war on drugs and welfare hurts the black population more than white people. No doubt about that.
You can summer in the Hamptons and go to Connecticut like
I'm
the rest of the people.
not on that level
Well,
yet.
it's just at the beginning.
But you know what's funny about that is my whole life I've had this thing where you mentioned like the Hamptons. I've never been, but like I promise you, if me and you went to the Hamptons right now and we like pull in, we first get in there, whatever, I would immediately become very uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And the discomfort is in a like a I don't belong here kind of way. But then there's also an element of like they know, you know what I mean? like they're gonna be able to tell, like look at me and tell like who let the you know.
Trust me, no one gives a shit. It's a general worry, I know. As a redneck with social anxiety, I do feel anxious that people will judge me, especially when I'm around upper class people. But my brother is a redneck and a computer engineer, so trust me, you're fine.
So you grow up, white trash, redneck community in Tennessee. Give me some of the good stuff about that, because you've talked about the good stuff and the values and that kind of stuff. Give me some of that.
Nature is a big one. Like it's absolutely beautiful there. The best part about my home county is the lake, Dale Hollow Lake. It's a objectively awesome lake, and so if you're into any outdoorsy stuff, we've got that in spades. And yeah, the sense of like community, everybody knows everybody. There's cons to that too, obviously, but there's a lot of good things about it. Like people actually genuinely care about each other for the most part, and also the food I'm a huge fan of. You know what I mean? Like my grandmas, both of them, you know, what most people would call soul food or whatever, I guess, but just, you know, frying everything and whatever else. You know, not good for the arteries, but good for the soul.
There you go.
The music, I think the South, as far as regions go, I think the South has the best music, or produces the best music in the country and maybe the world. And just the way I mentioned earlier, a lot, people like to have a good time. You know what I mean? Like, people are not very tightly wound there. You know what I mean? It's a lot more like laid back and just like relaxed atmosphere, and none of that whole like stereotypical rat race stuff that happens. You don't have any of that.
Now, I'm not from the South, I'm from the Pacific Northwest, but a lot of what I enjoy culturally and entertainment-wise comes from the South or is Southern-inspired. Lynyrd Skynyrd, Pantera, and so on. I love guns, I love pickup trucks, and I love fried food.
But the political stuff is where people start going, they're all backwards, and all that stuff.
What's weird to me, and I've talked to like people from places like I'm from about this a lot, and they pretty well agree with it. Like, as a kid growing up, people were mostly apolitical. I'm not saying they were like Democrats or anything like that. It's just like, they didn't really care. It was like, it seemed to be more of an attitude of like, to hell with them all. You know what I mean? They're all full of shit. They don't care about us.
Yeah.
And I mean, and that was pretty much it.
You see, he goes, they're all full of shit. They don't care about us. Yet, he's all right with being a Democrat. The party that buys votes through welfare and safety promises.
But I mean, it just wasn't as much of a thing as it is. So it's kind of weird to me too, honestly.
Doesn't that say something interesting just about economics in general, like that you grew up around this, but there was a factory, so people were working. So even if things weren't perfect, it's life. It's life like everybody else has. Then the jobs go away, and then suddenly it actually changes everything.
Yeah, because I mean, and any time that, obviously you're not unique to Salina, my hometown. This is the story in most places like that. But so the jobs leave, and then the pills come in, or the meth or whatever, drug use, substance abuse goes through the roof. So does crime, like theft, whatever, things like that. The businesses start shuttering. The downtown area is like totally dilapidated and whatever else, and it just brings everybody way down, and it's just this like cycle of horrible shit that and
yes, it is true. Those things are a response to bad economic conditions. Then why do you support the Democratic Party or the left-wing parties? Nehalem, a small town in Oregon, which is just a hop, skip, and a jump away from where I live, was once a thriving town, but regulation and tree huggers kept it at about 300 people by taking away its most crucial economic thriving industry. Your emotional economic beliefs hurt poor people and hurt progression.
Very, very against the war on drugs. That's another thing that I feel very strongly about, because it's also personal, because my mom is a recovering drug addict who also was a drug dealer who went to prison. So all that's very personal to me too, and I completely agree with it.
I believe that is consistent redneck belief. The government should leave you the hell alone. What you do with your body is your business. Also, it's the realization that locking up drug addicts does nothing to help their condition.
As far like, I'm a believer, obviously it needs to be done the right way, but I'm a believer in universal health care. I also am very pro food stamps and welfare and things like that. I've always felt like it would be baldly hypocritical of me if I wasn't, because like I survived on food stamps as a kid. You know what I mean? Like, if it wasn't for food stamps, I don't know what would have happened to me. So I feel like I'm living proof that those systems can work. You know what I mean? And yeah, they get abused, but that's just the reality. My attitude towards that has always been, but what is the alternative though? Letting kids go hungry, because I'm not willing to do that. So we got to just put up with some of the abuses. That's how I've looked at it. So,
first off, if you didn't have food stamps, you'd probably be more toned. I'm not insulting him or calling him fat. He's a fine dude, no homo. But I hate this view on welfare and food stamps. It's a dogmatic view. Just listen to what he said. Paraphrasing, of course, it's just the gist of what he said, but without government human subsidies, how would poor people eat? His automatic solution is that the government can fix it and that the government needs to fix it. As if the government wasn't the problem. No, it's always kind of a funny belief for a redneck. I want to be left alone. I want to be left the hell alone. Unless, of course, I want it and I think other people need it to be bothered too. Listen, welfare and food stamps is a solution to the symptoms by the people who created the symptoms, who created the problem that led to the symptoms. It's a bad one, and don't even get me started on universal health care.
Yeah, all the. In fact, I think eventually we're going to need a universal basic income because I don't think there's going to be enough jobs that exist for the amount of people that we have. So I think it's just the reality of where the world is going. All that stuff is pretty liberal, in my opinion.
You're a liberal. I believe it now.
Yeah.
I believe it.
Universal basic income because the free market and automation is scary. You're looking at it too dogmatically. Automation doesn't mean less workers. It could, but it doesn't. Here's what it means, for sure, or what it could mean as opposed to your belief. It means more productivity and less work, which yes, could mean less jobs or less people, but more productivity and less work, meaning instead of working 40 hours a week to feed a family, you only need to work 35 hours, or even 30. Hell, maybe even 20. Automation could mean 20 hours a week is the full-time job. Productivity means cheaper products. You obviously support a classless society, being a Democrat or socialist in idea, on paper, as opposed to a free one. Well, automation is the way to get to a classless society, or at least a society where people are at a more equal position. An example of this is automation and the tech industry that you guys are talking about. Imagine how many people bitched in the 80s and 90s when only the wealthy people had computers. Now everyone on your block has one because it's cheap and they're efficiently made. Automation means that poor people can travel the world better. Automation means that people can travel to work better. Automation means that people can spend more time with their families, and it will increase the standard of living.
I think everybody realizes at this point how close we're getting to self-driving vehicles. I mean, that's happening. There's no doubt that that's happening. And truck drivers, that's like the #1 occupation in something like 37 of the 50 states in this country or something like that. The most popular job is a truck driver.
That's a good thing. That is a very good thing. That means transportation will be more efficient. Poor people will be able to pay for a cab a lot cheaper because they're not paying for a living being. Transportation equals more productivity. Food and materials will be transported a lot easier and safer. You will have less costly accidents and won't have to worry about overworking a human. Imagine a single driver being able to work 24/7, as opposed to 8 hours to 10 hours on a given day. You could see a price drop in groceries and lumber and other materials that need to be transported. You could see a price drop in imports. That increases your standard of living. That's a good thing. You don't have to pay a robot benefits or lose money because it has to rest. Now, what it could mean is that everything is the same price and you feel like you have the same amount of money, but you need to work less to feel how you feel at 40 hours a week. Supply and demand is important. When there's a huge amount of supply but no demand, the price drops. Imagine a society that produces swiftly without labor. So you either work less hours or jobs become more entertainment-based, more art-based, or become figuring out a way to make machines run more efficient. Or a machine serves you personally. Think about it. We have less ice makers, milk deliverers, and less farmers because productivity has increased. But our society is better because of it. Jobs change as the market changes. Imagine you only had to work 20 hours a week. What would you do as a hobby? Would you start growing some fruits and vegetables in your backyard, or maybe raising some chickens for dairy or something, or for some meat? When you work less at a job, you have more time at home and you work at home instead. You either concentrate on a hobby or you personally figure out a way to support yourself without needing more work. That's how it works, and that's the good thing about it, especially if 20 hours a week gives you the same purchasing power as 40 hours a week.
What else are we going to do? You know what I mean? So that's just how, I just think, again, that's the reality of it. It's going to take something like a universal basic income.
So you think that would be the answer more than basically retraining an entire population to either fix computers or the robots or the drones or any of that? So that may be a bridge too far, basically.
Yes, I think so, yes.
So you're not going to take a truck driver and have him fixing drones? Just doesn't
No,
seem like
I'm not. And also,
yeah.
I think even if you tried to do that, no matter how many drones there are, I mean, if you think about, let's say like one robot replaces one person in a job capacity, which is not, that's not true.
It's actually many more.
Way more. But even if it is that, I would think that a maintenance person for that robot would also take care of 30 other robots. You know what I mean? Like, it's not going to be broken down all the time.
I've already explained why that view is dogmatic and unlikely.